Hey, I am KD Karen Das. I am the host of Sargam 103.1 weekdays 9 a.m. until noon. Now, I have a segment on my show as well as on Facebook called the Trinidad Bhojpuri Word of the Day and the Trinidad Bhojpuri Phrase of the Day. And the reason I started doing this, well, it was really for selfish reasons at first, because I wasn't fortunate to grow up with my grandparents. So I never had that opportunity to converse in Bhojpuri. And obviously, I don't have a wide vocabulary of Bhojpuri. So when I met Dr. Bhimull and I was introduced to Caribbean Hindustani, I thought, hey, this is a learning experience for me. And I'm pretty sure folks out there would appreciate it as well, you know? And so we started at the end of May, and we are in September, and we have managed to do this all through the week, and it is so much fun, so much fun, and it's a great learning experience, and it's a wonderful way as well for many to reconnect with their past. And so lots of folks are messaging to the show, sharing their memories of their grandparents, seeing Nani do this or hearing Aji say this. It's just really beautiful, yeah. So we're going to try to keep this up for the rest of the year. Let's see how it goes. Now, I have Dr. Bhimull with me, and we're going to discuss a word that I shared last Friday, and that word was Adowree. And the thing is, a lot of folks know what dowry is, so naturally I thought Adowree is a dowry, but Adowree is actually food related. Now, it was a new word for me. I did not know this word. So Dr. Bhimull is going to share with us what his take is on Adowree, because he speaks from personal experience with his grandparents. So this is going to be rather interesting.
I grew up with my paternal grandparents, Nana and Nani, and a lot of what they would practice, people my age didn't really experience it because they didn't have the same opportunity. So I remember certain things my grandmother used to put out to dry. That was something that was typical as part of the household. So she would have these wooden tables that my Nana would have built that she would put outside in the sun. And she would put, I remember, it would be yellow cloth, right? And a lot of things she would put to dry. So some things, sometimes there'll be grains like rice, dal, and kathai is something they used to make as well. That's when you dry the, so it's kind of like pickle achar, but it's different. They do have the oil and stuff. They normally put masala and dry it to pickle it in the sun, right? And a dowry was also something. As a in person of Indian origin, you would have everybody know what tomato chuka is, baigan chuka, and sada roti. But something like a dowry, not everybody seems to know about it,
Yes, that's
especially
right.
my age or younger. So and I think at my grandparents' house was the only place I saw it made. So a lot of people know about doubles bara, and some of the older people would say that the original doubles bara was made with urdi seeds. Urdi seeds is
Yeah.
a dark seed. You still get it in the supermarket and in the
Yeah.
market. Um, and one popular thing they would have is what we call a minsa. Now there was a jata before, which they used to grind grains with to make flour from the grains, be it dal, be it even urdi and stuff, right? So I would assume my great grandparents would make this using that. But with modernization, they had what we call a minsa. Now that's something I think a lot of people would know is this big metal funnel thing that you usually grind um, dal to make dal puri and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so the same thing they used to use, and the same process of grinding the adori was to soak it, and after they soak it, they would grind it because it'll get soft. And then she would add a lot of masala. Now back then they never used to buy really; they would make their own masala.
Yeah.
So she would basically have all the ingredients that she would add. Methi is something that they would add to it too. That's
That's
fenugreek,
tea.
right? That's one ingredient. But it was a lot of spices she would add to it, and I remember it. The urdi after ground would be kind of white. Now the shell of the urdi seed would be black, but when you grind it inside the flesh is white. So when they would grind it, it would be mostly white with these little speckles of black in it. And then after adding the masala, which was brown or dark brown, it would get a dark brown to black color, right? And I remember she would, it wasn't really balls. She would actually, when you take a little bit in your hand like that, you would access the imprints of the fingers in it.
Fingers, yes.
And So she squeezed it out. She'd squeeze it out. So
Okay.
they weren't round balls, but they were irregular shaped with the fingerprints the fingerprints in
With
it,
her fingerprints, yeah.
kind of describing, kind of giving or alluding to the process of how she would have made them, right?
Hmm.
And then she would take it and she would put it just like everything else outside to dry. And the drying process would take a little while, right? Anytime there's sun, she'd put it out to dry. And when it is really, really dry, so much so there's no liquid at all in it, she would pack it away. And I can't remember exactly what it was. It was a jar or a little sack or whatever. But when she would make dal or any sort of takari, like aloo takari or so, she would add that to it, right? Now it serves that dual purpose. It gave more uh, texture in the
Hmm.
context of having solid things. Not solid as in texture be thick, but solid as in it actually having something to eat. So and you remember when you make aloo tikari, sometimes if you make aloo tikari, it's kind of melt away. It'll be
Yeah.
soft. So
Yes.
this was something that will give it that additional not crunch because by the time you make it, it will be like soya, but it's something solid. As well as put it in dal and other little things that you would do. But then that in itself, just like soya bean, you could actually stew it or curry it to make a takari. The second purpose is that because it was laced with so much masala, when you put it in dal or you put it in any other takari, it would actually flavor it. And it would
Yeah.
give it a specific flavor because I remember it was a kind of acrid, spicy flavor. It wasn't I don't think I could describe anything else that I eat now that would give it that sort of. So it was sour and spicy at the same time.
Oh, okay. So let me see if I got this right. Because is it like, okay, so we have these, which is like a cube,
Mm.
and we would pop this in a bubbling pot, so it will just release a particular flavor. Um, is it sort of like this? Was it
Well,
used like this?
no, well, it was used as a purpose of flavoring. So in other words, then when like a tea bag, if you would put a tea bag um in hot boiling water, it would
Hmm.
steep and then the contents would come out so that you'd get the flavor of the teeny liquid. So it
Right.
was like that. But you see, those cubes melt.
Hmm.
It's
And this
they
doesn't melt.
No, it's just it like is like soya bean basically. The texture I
Right.
remember would be like kind of like soya, but more a little more crumbly. Soya bean is not crumbly but fleshy because soya
Hmm.
bean they actually make it to make meat, so you have to tear through it. Whereas when you chew this, it'll kind of crumble a little bit because it was grainy. It was grainy, and what held it together and glued together was the fact that well it dried. So the texture would be a little bit different, but when you make it, it was like that. It was solid little meatballs or urdi
Or the balls.
balls
Or the balls,
um,
yes. Okay. Well,
in
yes.
the curry.
There was a listener who messaged in, and he said he remembered they would use the jata to grind the seeds,
Mhm.
and they would use that for flavoring. It's pretty much the same way they would make it into little balls. Someone else has said though that he remembered the balls. They made it like little paloris,
Yeah,
and they would stuff it with bird pepper.
right.
So and you
So
could
again,
curry it as well. Yeah.
right. So that's why it was spicy, and then from the responses from the segment, a lot of people were saying other things they would make it with.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have to think about it like achar, right? Achar is pickle, but specifically Indian pickle. Now
Yes.
remember, depending on what is available, people would make achar based on that. So if mango is in season, you have mango achar. Amrak, which is the five fingers, when it's in season, you
Mm.
make achar. We used to make achar with sour cherries. So
Yes.
what was available, you would. So I would assume that this as well. Any pulse or fruits in a way which you could grind into grains enough to make these balls and dry them, you would, because people had said to me that yeah, they know about it, but not with urdi, but other things, right?
Yeah.
Um, but from my memory, I know it was urdi seeds, ground urdi seeds. It was made from.
Okay, so we learned something, Adowree. When last did you taste that?
I wasn't in secondary school. I think probably in primary school. My grandmother was around until I was about age 17. So yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I would tell you, seeing that they used to make it ever so often, but later on, used to make it less and less. Yeah, so probably in my early teen years.
So seeing that, you grew up with it and you know the process because you just described the process for us, you think you could make a dory by yourself?
Well, I wasn't really around when she would mix it to know exactly what, but my mom would know, and I'm not sure if she remember the recipe to um to make it, or she'd have to ask her older sisters. Um, I remember this is just one example, because there's a lot of other things that they used to make that I don't see anymore. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it'd be quite interesting for people to maybe try to revive that, because I think it's typically Indo-Trinidadian.
Mm.
Um, People in Suriname and Guyana might know of it, but it might be slightly a
Very
little bit
different. Yeah.
different. I remember when I went to Suriname and Guyana, older people did know about Adowree. Assume it will also be present in village India. One
Mm.
thing we want us to note about these things is that there's authentic Indian cooking, quote unquote authentic. There's a big difference between what we know as Indo-Caribbean cuisine and what is Indian cuisine present day. Our dowry is one example of that. So I don't know. I think it's something that the Indian community could consider to try to revive, because it is uniquely identity marker of their culture, cuisine culture specifically.
Great. So if anybody looking at this video, if you remember specifically how it was made, perhaps you can just hit us up. You can drop a message and share a recipe with us so Dr. Bhimull and I can actually try making a dory. We'll see how it comes out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So next week we'll have some fresh words for you. We have another phrase for you. So on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we have our Trinidad Bhojpuri words. And on a Wednesday, we have our Trinidad Bhojpuri phrase. So it's a great way for us to build our vocabulary as well as to foster greater appreciation for this part of our heritage and our culture. So all the best to you, Dr. Bhimull. Thank you so much
All right.
for Adowree, our lessons in Trinidad Bhojpuri. And let's see if we get lucky with a recipe and maybe we'll try this sometime.
Sure. I'm looking forward to these segments next week.
Yeah, so tune in to 103.1 FM. Just after 10 o'clock, we share the Trinidad Bhojpuri word/phrase. Of course, it's on our Facebook page, so it's on Caribbean Hindustani. We have it on my Facebook page as well. And of course, it's on air at 103.1. So take care. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
By the way, if you want to keep up with the words, you can visit my Facebook page, just search Karen KD Das, or you can catch up with Dr. Bhimull on Caribbean Hindustani on Facebook as well.